All right, ladies, and I think we may have one or two gentlemen in the call with us today. My name is Rachel Knipe. I'm the founder of Women in Tech and Entrepreneurship. Many of you are already active members and really familiar with our mission, but for those of you who are new here, we are a completely dues-free, membership-based group that resources women with educational content, near-peer mentorship, and a sense of community. We have 6 chapters across the state of Florida right now. We're a little over a year old, and we're working our way out of the state. Today's session is really generously sponsored by Fractio and Fatin Kwasny, an early Women in Tech and Entrepreneurship member, a 3-time founder, so a real glutton for punishment. And she brings 15 years of incredible startup and marketing experience to the conversation today. She's making this content possible for you all today because she knows that it could be very difficult to start scaling and growing your business, whether you're trying to attract more investment, attract more customers, both of those things. When you're in those early stages, it can be really tricky. So she's assembled an all-star team. Women in Tech and Entrepreneurship. If you're not a member yet, you can become a member simply by scanning this QR code. It is totally free to join us in our mission, and this will ensure you're connected with future and upcoming events, including our Women of Web 3 event, looking at Web 1 through 3, past, present, and future on February 13th. That'll be in Orlando at Quantum Leap Winery. But of course, as always, we will make it available in a hybrid format for those of you who aren't central to the area. So with that, I will pass it over to Fatin.
Thank you, Rachel, so much, and for giving Fractio the opportunity to support the organization. I mean, it's been a great time since we've been back in Florida. I started Fractio last year after spending 10 years working at tech startups in three different states, I should say. And then my husband, kids, and I all came back here 5 years ago. When literally a house dropped in our laps. We weren't even looking for it. Spring break came and we're like, all right, we're moving back. And my husband was like, this is the 3rd time you've made me move. This is it. We're done. So being back here, supporting the local tech ecosystem, including WTE, and just galvanizing around other women who, have the ability and want the ability to make an impact for women in tech and in startups, whether it's here or beyond. It's been a great pleasure. So Fractio was actually born out of that work of working at startups. So, while on those early and founding teams, like I saw that inherently, we were running into the same things. And this is, some of the things that we'll discuss most likely during the panel. But, there were a lot of things that would happen, like being stretched too thin or wearing multiple hats or, trying to figure out what direction to go. And there were disparities in silos, but in some cases, it would cause us to hemorrhage money in places because there just wasn't synergy or processes in those places. But that just happens by nature, whether it's my experiences or anyone else's experiences, because, just by nature, startups can be very unpredictable, unstable, and they just can't always leverage people effectively. So being armed with the different modes that you can build a team and the different, stages of growth where it makes sense, is very important. So, I wanted to understand why that was happening, right? And I learned that, internal dynamics and running out of money are among the main reasons that we hear statistics like 90% of startups fail. And, after my own experiences, I really wanted to solve that. So, while building Fractio, I realized that really those failures really came down to only 3 things: wasted opportunity, time, and skill. And what I mean by that is just, lack of guidance on direction, or just unknowingly because of tunnel vision, or just not knowing what to do, just time spent in the wrong things, or not leveraging people in the right ways. Meanwhile, talent is the number 1 fixed cost for startups, regardless of what stage they're in. Meaning it's a cost that's not related to the product they're building, but they're still spending it, right? So Fractio came about because I was thinking about ways, okay, how to reduce the risk of that failure, so that a team would no longer have to be in that inherent survival mode, right? And then they could start to learn to start thriving. So Fractio enables that. by literally changing its character from the inside, so that they can build out their full-time team in a very thoughtful and methodical manner as it grew. And then that way it could actually achieve its mission, right? So, the other thing I'll mention is, in reality, at least this is something that while building Fractio and just speaking with founders, is that adding more money or extending a startup's runway really can't fix the waste issue. So Fractio is fixing that waste issue by making talent a stable but variable cost for startups. So we bring founders usage-based access to exceptional talent through fractional skills, and that's for the guidance and the execution work. And you can flex along their stages of growth using a month subscription. So that way they pay for the knowledge that they consume as it's used up, but while still getting the breadth and depth of skills that they need to grow through that those stages, and then we manage the flow of work for them. So I'll just end that with, if you're interested in learning more about Fractio, whether it's onboarding as a practitioner, or if you're a current practitioner or a full-time employee that has some free time to support startups, there's an application on the website you're welcome to fill out. And then everyone gets their fair market rate. We manage the terms of service. And then if you're a startup, if you want to try Fractio, you can get started for free. Just visit the pricing page and you can request access from there. The website's fractio.co. So I'll just end there. And with that, I want to turn the table to our exceptional talent that we have on this panel and let them introduce themselves. They've literally traversed vision to traction for themselves and others. And so regardless of the mode that you choose or that you need in your stage of growth, this panel just wants to arm you with the knowledge about when and how to move from vision to traction by leveraging marketing and sales talent in the right way for you. So with that, I will turn it over to Patricia and Virginie, and then Adele and Pamela to introduce themselves.
Thank you, Fatin. I'm Pat Loftus, and in the short time, I'll give you 3 types of adventures in my journey as a woman in tech. But I'm going to give you a spoiler alert right up front. My passion is impact investing at the intersection of entrepreneurship and innovation ecosystems. My experience began as an intrapreneur, not an entrepreneur. I set sail as a new nuclear engineering graduate and entered the energy industry as a generation vendor in the corporate world. And at the time, that was all that was really available or expected. I progressed through technical, leadership, management, executive management, operations, marketing, product development, strategy, pretty much the whole gambit. And in addition, profit and loss management. I then moved off into the energy sector to be with my clients. And the clients, I went inside as an employee in leadership and turnaround and M&A. The combination of those experiences as an intrapreneur, along with the mentorship that I received, encouraged me to grow and to have the courage to take the leap to actually do intrapreneurial activity that we're going to talk about today. And what's important is not the start of the journey, but how you progress through the journey and build upon it. I've done turnarounds. I've done organization and mergers and acquisitions. I've done technology commercialization. I've brought hardware products into the marketplace. I've managed innovation projects from conception through delivery. But that wasn't all. I was an entrepreneur as well. I did a direction shift and went totally outside of tech into the residential real estate arena, where I was a practicing real estate professional and an instructor in a new city. I quickly realized my income, lifestyle, wealth, and equity goals could not be achieved by going it alone. And I had to form partnerships in order to survive and thrive. I also found that in that experience, this wasn't a great fit for me. So I went back into being an intrapreneur again and progressed through a slightly different trajectory. What's really important is I then jumped back out into a technical consulting entrepreneurial role for a period of time. And fast forward to today. I'm with New World Angels as an investor, serve on the investment committee. I serve as the Innovation Fund Board of Managers Observer. I'm an early stage advisor. I'm a scoreboard director and a volunteer mentor, and also serve on the Penn State Research Foundation Board of Directors. With that, I'll turn it over.
Thank you, Patricia. Hi, my name is Virginie Glanzer. I'm originally from France. I moved in 1999 to San Francisco Bay Area. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've done about 5 startups so far. I've had my fair share of successes and failures. And today, after moving to New York City for so I spent 17 years in San Francisco and then moved to New York for about 11 years. I'm now located in DC for a couple of years, and I'm a fractional chief marketing officer. I help early stage startups, but also mid-sized organizations who understand the power of fractional executive 1 to 3 days per week. And I'm excited to be here. And first of all, thank you, Rachel and Fatin, for having me on the panel.
Thank you.
Oh, hi, everyone. Thanks, Fatin. Thanks, Rachel, for inviting me to be here today. My name's Adele. I'm with Chiefly Consultants. I'm an Aussie transplant here in New York City. And I guess like the other ladies, you could say I'm a serial entrepreneur. I started my first business in 2006. I've had 5 different business types, from services, e-commerce, industry association, and professional services. And like Virginie, some have been awesome, some have not been so awesome. So we've all been on that roller coaster of owning businesses. So I did manage to sell 3 of them. So that was quite cool. And along the way, particularly in Australia, enjoyed some peer-driven awards, which really helped elevate my profile and business opportunities. So I transplanted myself to New York in 2019, and pardon me, I found a niche for a fractional chief of staff, and I really leaned into that. Insofar as a chief of staff's not really a thing in Australia, so it kind of was like I was doing it, but didn't know what it was called. So learning all the time, never give up. So my corporate career, which was very solid, and my business experience really highlighted to me the importance of providing support to entrepreneurs and business leaders that went far beyond that of an EA. And I know this because I was an EA. So I grew from an EA into a chief of staff with, 30 plus years experience. So Chiefly provides fractional chiefs of staff to entrepreneurs and business leaders who really want to get out of the day-to-day of their business and really focus on big thinking issues. A chief of staff is a generalist role, which is great, and we're able to identify and importantly fill over the gaps in business along with other fractional experts. So aside from creating well-oiled machines, our experience has shown that those entrepreneurs who are looking at funding, very important, have a greater success if they have operations, strategic planning, and project management process all buttoned up. And these are great areas for a chief of staff to lean into. So I look forward to chatting with you more about this during our fireside today.
Hello, everybody. My name is Pamela Starr, and I have done both sides of the business world. I have been a business owner. I am still a business owner, but I've also bounced back and forth between having my own business and working for major, well-known, publicly traded organizations. What that has done is given me the opportunity to learn big business skills that then I can help educate startups who are trying to become bigger, how they can use the types of skills that big business corporate employees use in a way that makes sense for their individual smaller startups. I am also an investor in a tech startup, and I have watched that business grow from their seed founding to their next round their next run of investments. And so it's been a lot of fun to watch that a little bit from the sidelines. But I am here to answer any questions that you might have about sales and marketing for your particular business.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Pamela, Adele, Virginie, and Patricia so much for those introductions. So our audience can, for sure see that like you've been on both sides of the table, the founder side, the employee side, the corporate big picture side, the how do we get started and get there side of things. So let's kind of baseline as far as, when a founder is thinking about when to hire. A number of things kind of run through their mind. Like they have to kind of do everything all at once for some period of time. But, how do you determine, this is just an open floor question to the four of you. How do you determine when to transition from founder-led sales and marketing to actually hiring dedicated professionals for those roles? And in addition to that, if you could share some examples of signs that would indicate that it's actually time to do so. I'll open it to the floor.
Yeah, I'm happy to jump into that one, which is something that I've very often experienced myself. So I think from the inside, in the business, it's time to hire when your inbox has become a battleground. And from a marketing standpoint, if your cat starts giving you marketing advice, that's when it's time to hire. From the external point of view, you have to hire when your moms or your friends are the only one buying your product. That's also the time to expand your team. Now, most seriously, I think one key indicator is when you have growth goals that you're unable to satisfy and you're willing to invest in additional resources. I think that's when you're ready to hire sales or marketing talent.
Okay, thank you for that. Anyone else?
I'd like to jump in and just kind of play off of that. And another key trigger is when increased funding becomes available. And in fact, when increased funding becomes available or you're seeking funding, you have to take into account the focus and the expectations of the investors, both in the courting and in the pitch stage, but also once the check is cut, and you're on to execution. So investors expect solid sales and marketing strategy and go-to-market plans. They also expect the execution. As investors, we're willing to tolerate some amount of ambiguity coming out of the blocks, but with a clear plan for who's the first hire, what do they look like, how are they going to get there, and in the interim, how are you going to deliver on the expectations that you provided to us as a result of us in your use of funds? So with that, I'll turn it over.
Okay, Pamela, you wanted to offer? We have a few more seconds and then we can probably move to the next question, but I want to hear what you have to say.
Just very briefly, at some point, the business owner trying to do it all is holding back their own success. Yeah. And so if you're finding that your need or your desire to do some of these things are getting in the way of your growth, that's when you need to bring in somebody else to do some of this for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're on point. So if a founder is thinking about like, okay, I need to hire. Yes, I'm like going crazy. Can't do this. What are some critical roles that they should fill first, like when they're scaling the business that they're building? Any thoughts on that from the panel?
So you're asking, should people hire sales or marketing?
Yeah,
or which one?
If you think about kind of the growth trajectory, so like, first they want to make sure that like, all right, yeah, I have a product, it's selling and the market wants it. And I have a sort of an idea of business model, but like, what roles should they bring in at those different stages?
Yeah.
Like,
I think in today's economy where everything starts by a story, I would 100% advise founders to start with marketing. It's about the story you tell. Is it compelling enough? Is it clear? Is it enticing? And do you tell that story at the right place? Can people find you? And when they do, how excited are they? And how much urgency do they feel? Once your brand story and positioning, but that's also true for product marketing. Knowing which feature to launch first, doing market research to understand what people expect and what they desire. So I think you definitely have to have the right marketing tech stack to sustain the growth. And then you can reach out to salespeople once you're there. There can be focused on driving deals and closing deals.
Okay.
That would be my recommendation.
Got it. Okay. And kind of related to that, just to add on to that, is if you think of hiring sales or marketing, anyone have an idea on whether that should happen sequentially, at the same time? When does it matter? When does it differ?
Well, in my humble opinion, I'd say you've got to have your marketing strategy right to give to the salespeople to go out and execute. It's no use trying to sell something if you haven't got a clear plan on how you're going to sell it, what your message is, exactly what Virginie said. I love how it always is like the department is sales and marketing. It should be marketing and sales. The flow of how it works. You get the marketing wrong, sales will follow.
Got it. Yeah, no, that makes sense. Anyone else have anything to add? Have plenty of questions for you, so we can continue on otherwise. Okay, well, that's all great food for thought when it comes to like, okay, when to hire, when's the right time, I'm building something, go to market, how do I do that, who do I bring on? So if we're thinking about, all right, they've made the decision, like it's time to hire. What are some key elements of influence that come to mind when it comes to actually the influence that that person is going to have on the business? So talking about strategic business foundation, and this question is for Adele and for Patricia. How can startups kind of lay a solid foundation for effective marketing and sales in terms of operations?
I'll take a shot and then I'll turn it over to Adele. For me, it's really about being customer-centric and customer-focused. It all starts there. It's also about continuous learning, and it's about the strategic use of resources. I tend to start with the target market. Who are you trying to serve? What's your value proposition? What are the pains and gains and the jobs to be hired? Not done, but hired. And then how does what your business does translate to a solution, a pain reliever, or a gain? And it's really about that fit. It's about product solution fit. It's about product market fit, because product solution fit, if no one buys it and you don't have a market test, isn't a business. Product market fit says, yeah, I think there's something out there that somebody's willing to buy. And the very last part is really about the business model. It's tying all of that together in a little loop, whether it's a business plan or a lean canvas, whatever it is, and saying, can I really make a business? And can I really grow the business based on what I have? And the ability to be agile and think about it and go through the discovery process, because it doesn't happen the first time. Adele?
Well, you've kind of covered it all up, but I agree with you. Is this you've got to have a product or service that people want to buy. So there's, even though you think it's the most brilliant thing ever, if no one's going to buy it, then you've got to do a pivot, or you've got to know your market. So that was really what the notes I had was like, really truly understanding your customer avatar and knowing what their pain point is, and being 98% certain, never 100% certain, that what you've got in your back pocket is what they're looking for. And then having the clarity around the strategy of the messaging and saying, I know their problem, I've got the solution, but how do I put those two things together so someone says it and goes, yes, that's what I want, add to cart. So, and then finding where those people hang out, try and find the low-hanging fruit to get started, just to A/B test things, even if it means old school networking and saying, is this a pain point? Is this not? So you can do some very low cost A/B testing of different methods or techniques of messaging or product if you've got two different similar things. So, lean until you kind of hit that sweet spot and then scale on that.
Okay, got it. So let's kind of wrap that around like market analysis. Like, how does a founder, so like, if we think of the steps, if you were just to think of like a few steps that a founder would need to take to be able to conduct that kind of thorough market analysis to make sure that like the business skills that they have that analysis actually is aligned with that for sustained growth. And I'll turn this over actually to Virginie and to Patricia if you have any thoughts on that. We'll give it like a minute or so. And I have plenty of questions, trust me. I'm going to get as much that we can.
The market research, I think, is such an important phase in the life of a company, especially at the beginning. But when it comes to market research, which can include defining your target audience, Adele mentioned it, doing competitive analysis, sometimes primary research, secondary research, even data analysis, SWOT analysis, market size, growth, segmentation, risk assessment. I think you can spend an entire year researching. But by the time you think you've gathered all the answers, you might be too late. So to me, the real challenge is to find the right balance between figuring out what you don't know about the market and launching your product without having all the answers. And what I recommend is spending at least a few weeks, 2 to 3, to do a basic research, which is, what does your audience desire? What are their preferences? What's the competitive landscape? So how do you fit within the existing reality? And then having some financial planning, and then just do it.
Anything to add to that, Patricia? Oh, you're on mute. You're on mute.
I think that's absolutely spot on. And I think one element of this that I want to just re-inject into the thought process is that works really well when you are doing it organically and you don't have external investors. Another element of everything that she just said is you have to take into account the expectations, the growth trajectory, the growth strategy of the investors and their expectations. And many times we see that the growth potential is an important factor in actually writing the check and then actually executing and pivoting and pivoting and pivoting until you get there. But doing it smartly, using the most effective use of resources to get you to that next value creating milestone.
Got it. Okay. So that actually kind of ties into this next question, just given that, things are so iterative and giving this back and forth of like, that you're almost ping ponging against the market, trying to get signals from them and then like iterating along the way. So this question is for Virginie and for Pamela. If you look at kind of like, if you were to let a startup know, like, okay, here's how you should approach like a sales playbook or a marketing plan, knowing that it needs to pivot along with their business operations throughout that like early to growth stage phase. How would you advise them to approach that? And I'll start with Virginie.
I was going to say if Pamela wants to go first, but that's fine.
Oh, okay.
No, that's so this is a really good question because I think we all assume that there is a sales and marketing playbook, and it's, you can find templates online and just, do it step at a time. But as you pointed, the economy, the market, the consumer's expectation is changing so rapidly that whatever you're conceiving a few months ago or even a year ago is likely to become obsolete. So in order to pivot, whatever your plan is, to me, it's making sure that you stay agile by having a marketing plan that is between 3 to 6 months. I remember when I started my career back in the early 90s, we had a 2 years marketing plan or even a 3 years marketing plan. It no longer is accurate. So if you're an early stage startup, I would say only plan 3 months at a time. And then if you're a big organization, because things takes more time, maybe 6 months. But even though the investors may say, I want to, what's your 2024 year plan? From a tactical and implementation standpoint, I will only do 3 or 6 months, especially with AI. And I'll stop there. AI is, it feels like being slapped in the face as a chief marketing officer. The playbook that I was given back from Silicon Valley, from the business school that I did, is absolutely obsolete. So I really have to readjust to challenge my own way of thinking, and it's not easy. So 3 to 6 months would be my recommendation.
Got it. And then Pamela, I mean, you've seen so many hundreds of SMBs and startup, just being on that whole side of things. What would you add to that from the sales side?
Yeah, absolutely. The customer base is changing incredibly rapidly. They're being influenced by influencers who may or may not be true industry professionals. So there's a fine line. You absolutely do need to be looking at the market changes and being sure that you can react to those market changes without finding yourself kind of falling into the trap of chasing every bright, shiny object that you discover, because that's another big mistake a lot of startups can make is now I'm going to do this. We kind of forget about that. So I think that the 3-month marketing strategy, I think that's fantastic. And still, obviously, we all need to have a longer vision for our business. But I agree, the days of, figuring out what your spend is going to be in January of 2025, I think those days are long gone.
Yeah, got it. No, sage advice there. Okay, so let's all hold that thought in our minds. Okay, we've talked about, when's the right time to hire? What are the key elements that are going to be affected? How the market and just the way that things are today is changing even the game plans that anyone wants to have in their heads. So let's talk a little bit about modes of hiring. So how do we fill the gap with sales and marketing talent? I'll start with one question for the floor, and we'll spend a minute or two on this. Just keep that in mind. So here's a question. So thinking of all of that happening, how do you align the vision with the strategy of the company and the individuals that you hire for these roles? And related to that, what strategies can help the startup actually attract the right sales and marketing talent that can be embedded in the startup's mission, vision, and values in that environment? Any thoughts on that from anyone?
I'm happy to jump into that. First of all, I think that aligning the vision and the strategy with the new hire doesn't happen overnight, unfortunately. And I think it's important to recognize that there's a big part of chance and randomness in actually finding the right people. However, to increase the chances and align the new hire with the vision, I think there's a process. To me, the process would look like communicating clearly the vision and the strategy, like having it on paper, which is not an easy thing to do. Then defining roles for people to know where they fit into that vision. So making sure that they have clarity about what does this vision and strategy means for their own role and job. And then, of course, during the hiring process, you may want to try to align or to assess the alignment, specifically not so much for the strategy, but for the vision. And then after you made the choice of hiring those people, I think it's really about having a comprehensive onboarding with relevant training. Again, going back into this is the vision, the strategy. It's also maintaining an open communication and setting performance goals that are directly linked with both the vision and the strategy. And then I would say finally, on a regular basis, and I've seen very few organizations do that, it's recognizing and rewarding the alignment over time, because it's making sure, it's almost like with children. You want to praise them on their good behavior.
That's great. Anyone else to add to that?
I think that kind of hand in hand with hiring the right people also goes not hiring the wrong people. And one of the things I see with a lot of startups or a lot of businesses that are really kind of in their infancy, when they're ready to go kind of beyond the founder, especially when it comes to marketing and online marketing, is, oh, my niece is really good at social media, I'll hire her. Or I've got this college intern and I don't have to pay them, I'll use them. And so one of the things I recommend startups think about, if you want to bring your niece or you want to have a college intern do these things for you, is that the person that you would want to sit down face to face with your next best customer without you in the room? And that's kind of the thresholds that I like to think of when it comes to hiring a marketing person, because really they are setting the tone of what your business is all about. And if your niece can do that, more power to you. But be thoughtful about who you're not hiring just as much as being thoughtful about who it is that you are hiring.
Right. No, it's a good point. And I want to segue just in the interest of time too, but this is actually related, this next question that I have for you, because if you're talking about the niece or the intern or, what's kind of the cheapest hire that can get, that's really a cost management topic, so it's, if we look at, hiring as a cost center, this question I'll give over to Patricia, Pamela, just to continue your thoughts on it, and also Adele. So just knowing that, what strategies can startups employ to actually optimize the resources and leverage different, modes of talent, such as, fractional talent, there's freelance talent, full-time talent, during these critical growth stages?
I think we started down the path, but I'm going to reinforce something that Virginia said, and that is define what jobs you need to have done. What's the priority? What's the focus? Separate out the noise from the things that are going to move the needle. And then look critically at the hard and soft skills. So that's the knowledge, the expertise, and the skill sets that are required. And it could very well be that it's a combination of just do it's combined with the more seasoned and experienced talent, particularly in tech, who's been there, done that, got the t-shirt, and can rapidly move through not only the industry, but the connectivity, and bring that network to say, fail fast forward quick. And so it could be a combination of full-time. It could be a combination of part-time. It could be freelancers. But I encourage starting with the priority and then starting with the strategy. Begin with the end in mind.
Great. Adele, anything to add there? And Pamela?
Yeah, I do.
Oh, sure.
I love Pamela's quote about, oh, my niece can do that. I've seen that more times than I've had hot dinners. And it's basically where if it's you, and we've just talked about the strategy, these guys aren't necessarily had the business acumen to grasp that strategy and really understand what you're doing. And time is of the essence. You haven't got time to muck around with someone who wants to do a pretty Instagram post when you've got a whole strategy to drive forward. So it's you've got time, particularly if you've got investors involved and they're like watching the clock and they're wanting to see those reports come in. So I think that there's a combination of all of those things. If you have an expert who truly understands the strategy and can get the thing driving forward, and then you probably do need doers that the niece can do, but with the right intent and the right message. So there is a combination of spending a bit more money to get someone who really can get that strategy moving fast, and then perhaps having a lower cost or an outsourced cost of the actual function of doing it rather than the driving of doing it.
Got it. And Pamela, what do you think?
There's a difference between somebody that you hire to do a task and somebody that you hire to help you grow your business. And so, like we've all talked about, maybe you've got a combination of both. Maybe the niece is great, as Adele said, of creating those pretty Instagram posts. Or, maybe you find somebody online that can create something that's very, very clearly defined. But unless your niece is a sales and marketing professional by education and experience, you may be better off perhaps even having the strategy person who then can hire, if necessary, a tactical person.
Got it. Okay, great. So that's actually a great segue into another question. It's related to that as well. But if you're thinking about the strategic and tactical execution on the sales and marketing side and trying to balance that with operations, this question's for Patricia and for Virginie. But just tying what Adele and Pamela just said is, for Patricia. So if you think of these startups, like they're inherently fluctuating, they're trying to navigate these unpredictable outcomes while they're trying to get the right people on board. How can women founders in particular actually effectively manage balancing the operational procedures in place, the compliance, and then like the actual execution? And then for Virginie, just hold that thought, Patricia. For Virginie, if you think of a role coming in, let's say, fractional talent, for example, a chief fractional chief marketing officer compared to a freelancer or a full-time person coming in to actually address that while all of this is happening. So I'll start with Patricia.
A couple of key things, and the first is it's where you are in the stage of your business. If you're at a minimum viable product, if you're just in the early launch stages, the answer is very different than in growth stage or launch stage. So it's really about focusing on where you are and then bringing the experience to bear, both the strategic and the tactical, to move you to that next milestone. It's also about the credibility, because one of the things that happens in the early stages of most companies is that the leadership team is being tested, their ability to deliver and execute. And so a more experienced fractional CMO, for example, or fractional salesperson brings that instant credibility, that track record, those connections. And so recognizing that balance is very, very important.
And Virginie, and then I'm going to have Adele and I'd like to have Adele and Pamela also add their perspective from the sales side. So after you, because it all just kind of ties together.
Yeah. So I think it's really essential for founders, any founders, to have advisors and, small groups or circle of trusted experts so they can get a wider perspective and some honest feedback. I mean, it's easy to drink the Kool-Aid and forget who we serve, especially as we grow and we get super busy. Now, you mentioned women founders, but I think that's worth for all founders. And actually, women founders, I just want to point at that because I think it has to be said more than once. Many research have found that companies that had a gender diversity on their executive team or on their board were much more likely to be more successful. So McKinsey, I think I took a note on 25% of companies that had executive team with women are more likely to have above average profitability. So, just if you're listening and you're a man, you should have women on your board or on your executive team because it's likely that you'll have more success. Now, to answer the question about fractional talent, I think this is a huge opportunity, and I'm sure most people have heard, maybe not everyone, but the word fractional. So for those who are not familiar, the fractional executives are actually the evolution of the gig economy. And I think during the 2020 pandemic, we've all experienced firsthand that we've seen people being loyal and productive while working remotely, which means that remote working is fundamentally challenging the traditional 9 to 5. So today you don't really evaluate someone's work by the time they put in, but it's a lot more dependent on the quality of their work, their creativity, ability to perform. So that's why fractional work makes sense. You don't need 8 hours per day of anyone. You need them to be creative, communicating, and efficient at the right time. Now, for the fractional executive, as Patricia, I think, or Adele just said, it brings credibility to have a fractional CMO or a fractional CRO, CTO, and you can get, the whole gamma as a fractional. It's much cheaper. You're really paying for a fraction of the cost for, and these, I think these people as fractional are a lot more transparent and authentic because there's no politics involved when you are a fractional. You're not trying to, make sure that you're appreciated and work the ladder up. You're just here because you're passionate about your world. The big difference between a fractional versus a consultant is as a fractional is part of the team. You have an email address from the company and you're responsible and accountable for the result of the people that you're managing, but also of the outcome of your work. So it's really, yeah.
Great. No, that's a good point. And I know we're a couple minutes over. We definitely want to open the floor to questions. I want to be respectful of everyone that's on the, in the audience and listening. And hopefully, this has been great advice. One thing that I want to add before we move on to that, just to add to what Virginie said is, Patricia and Adele has probably seen this as well, is we just mentioned, with generative AI, shifting, everything over to remote work, all of this kind of happening together. The landscape has really changed and it's evolved. And, there's just so much more that could be said on this, just from that perspective. And even, Pamela from the sales side, having worked with so many SMBs, and just on the sales training side and sales leadership, and Adele, just like having to cinch all the operations with all of this flux happening. So there's definitely, a difference when it comes to, the need for full-time versus freelancers that can be task-based when needed, or fractional roles. So with that, Rachel and Jojo, I think we should probably turn it over to the floor for questions.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much. And we did put QR codes here if you're interested in connecting directly with all of the speakers, one speaker in particular. Feel free to scan that code and reach out. Thank you so much. What a great discussion. We did have a question come in, and Brandy, I'm sorry if I mispronounce your name, but we're opening up the floor if you'd like to join us and ask your question.
So I actually wanted to give a partial answer to one of the things that was asked, is who do you know, how do you know who to hire, when to hire, a lot of that, like which direction do you go? So I wanted to share my perspective, which is not more right or less right, but just kind of different. So I've also helped many companies launch in the last few years. And I find that it's very important at the start of the business to understand what within you is the identity of what you're creating and why. So let's say if you're creating a business because you want to fix something in your past, or you want to create a new energy in the world, or you feel that if you created this, the world would be different. So that is like the initial energy that is going to actually create the entire business. And you want to solidify that knowledge of yourself because that's your home base. And then let's say I want to hire a worker. So the worker is going to be doing marketing. That person doesn't need to hold my viewpoint, but that person needs to have something within them that is also yearning for expression, that will find it by joining me. So what's driving me is not going to be what's going to drive all my workers, but to create an environment where I'm coming from my perspective, creating this, and this person would love to bring that, and that matches. And then when you have those follow-ups and discuss, what I want and what you want, you make sure to incorporate both the people's deep inner drives to get the biggest natural resources, because we're all most driven when we're driven from within. So I wanted to share that too.
Yeah, very passionate. Thanks for sharing. I really appreciate the energy around this. I do have a question that has been slid through here, which is something that I've experienced leading sales and marketing teams myself. Could we spend a moment kind of talking about the do's and don'ts, or the most common mistakes that we see when we're hiring those very early stages sales and marketing professionals? We talked a little bit about the going for cost over necessarily getting the job done earlier. What are some of the others that you guys have seen as cautionary tales?
For me, the most experience comes from the biggest mistake is cultural misalignment. It's about the why, as Brittany just indicated, but it's very fundamental. There's only one vision for the company, and if the culture is not aligned, you have to address it as soon as possible. It's not
agree
doing
with
the company well, and it's not doing the individual well. It's not good or bad. It's a fit.
Yep.
Completely agree with what Patricia said. I think the people, a lot of people are rushing the hiring process because I think there's a fear of missing out on the right candidates. But I think neglecting the cultural fit, which is really the values and the belief, and then also underestimating the soft skills. I think if I was to hire someone today, I would find someone who's curious, who has compassion, and who's creative. The technical aspect, we can always be trained. I mean, it depends on, the role. But I think that's definitely something that can prevent a lot of misalignment when it comes to hire.
Great perspective. Sorry about that.
Yeah, sorry. I also said that when I had to hire people, I sometimes say, this is what might go wrong in my company. Are you sure you can deal with it? Because that gets rid of all the people who come with entitlement and all the people who are not looking to work.
And yeah, and that's a great lead in to another question that we had come out is, how do you measure the impact and ROI of your sales and marketing hires? And that looks like it's not for anyone in particular, so we might be able to take it from anybody from the panel.
I think we've talked about it before, is there's, in terms of the strategy, there's going to be a metrics that's got to be established very early on about what success looks like. And so that it has to be, I think it was discussed earlier on, there's got to be accountability, communication, pivoting, polishing, all of those things, but there has to be a metrics of some sort. Depending upon your product or your service and what stage you're at, but there has to be milestones that need to be measured and fleshed out. If they're not being met, there has to be, can't let it go so far down the line that it's like, oh, we didn't make that milestone 3 months ago. It's got to be consistent and very quick, in my view anyway, frequent rather than quick.
I think that's really the ultimate objective when you start a company, is to have this vision of yours being translated into data points, so KPIs that will allow you to know if you're going in the right direction. The challenge becomes, sales and marketing KPIs are pretty straightforward. Sales is usually around revenue, number of clients. You could also have retention. Marketing is more around brand awareness and marketing funnel, customer loyalty. We should also have some sort of KPIs in terms of employees and the number of projects that they are starting, the ability to form various teams. And then you connect those KPIs to each individuals. And so they know, what do I impact? Whether I'm an administrative assistant to a customer support. And I think that really is about giving people control over their own job and, an ability to say, well, if I'm supposed to have an impact on that number, these are the things that maybe I should be involved in or doing.
I think another element that we have not talked about, and that is the financial element. We're running a business. And so it's super important to take the operational metrics and tie them off against what the health of the business is. It's basic balance sheet, cash flow, and an income statement, and how that breaks down to the basic operational metrics.
And I think, I know we're down in our last 4 minutes. So if another member on the call has a question, we can pass on this one. But in working with a lot of founders, I find that if you're technical, if you don't have marketing experience in particular, while there are really clear goalposts for sales in terms of moving revenue needles, there are a lot of metrics for marketing, and a lot of them can be vanity metrics. And if you aren't an expert, how do you vet the metrics that your marketing expert or your marketing hire is presenting to you? How do you decide if they're even the right metrics for your business?
They should be able to sell to you.
And they can, and that's part of the problem, right? So I frequently have worked with founders to overhaul and fix their marketing where, we were told that X was the metric and very convincingly told. So for our panelists, have we dealt with this? Do we have a good rule of thumb, maybe a framework for validating what your new expert is bringing to you?
Well, I think, Rachel, you bring up a really good phrase, which are the vanity metrics. That is something that I hear a lot. This is how many hits I have on my website every month. I'm so great. But I think when you're hiring marketing talent, especially if it is somebody with experience, those absolutely are good conversations to have during the interview process. And, hopefully you're not just interviewing one or two people. If you're interviewing 3 or 4 people, you can ask them all the same questions and see what their responses are. Which may be, if you're not the marketing experts, get the information from the people who are, or at least who claim they are.
I think another key point, playing off of what Pamela just said, and it's not just the interview process, but in the early days, and that is what experiences have you brought to the table to demonstrate that, in fact, in a like industry or in a like performance mode, that you have backed up the recommendation. So it's really bringing the credibility. That's number one. Number two is, and we've talked about it a bit, and that is there are mentors, advisors, and coaches out there who have also been there, done that, got the t-shirt. And the CEO and the founders don't have to be omnipotent. They just need to have someone in their network that they have as a sounding board to say, does this make sense? And feel, and be comfortable reaching out and saying, I don't know. I'm going to go get some sounding board input. And then, of course, make the call.
Amen to that. We should do a whole additional session on picking your board of advisors. I know we are down to our last minute here, and this is a busy team. I want to respect everyone's time. Fatin, do you have any parting closing thoughts you'd like to share as we hop off here?
It's been a great discussion, and Virginie, Pamela, Adele, and Patricia, thank you so much for lending your time to the audience here. And Rachel, thank you for allowing me to moderate the conversation. And, hopefully everyone's walking away with a little bit more knowledge around, again, regardless of mode, what's right for you. But if you're thinking about traversing that journey between vision and traction, hopefully we've given you some food for thought of, some things to consider when leveraging sales and marketing in particular. And with that, I'll pass it on to the panel with any final remarks, and we can say goodbye.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Everyone, I cannot thank you all enough for lending your expertise to us today, and JoJo for lending your expert event skills to us all the time. If anyone has any questions, you can reach out via email. We'll close the loop with a connect with the speakers and Fractio email for everyone who registered for the session. Thank you all for coming, and have a fabulous weekend ahead.